Hello, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are having a fantastic day whenever you've decided to click on this video. I'm having a pretty good day. Was the worst week of my life. I don't really want to go into the details. I talk about it a little bit on the community tab on YouTube if you want the lowdown. But essentially, my best friend died on Monday. I don't want to, again, make this a bummer. I don't really want to go into the details. I'm not really ready to talk about it yet, but I woke up this morning and I wanted to make this video. I wanted to do something. I wanted to make something. That's kind of how I have been coping a little bit, I think, this past week, is making things, been crafting and decorating my house and just trying to focus some of my energy on other things. And today I just wanted to do this wrap up, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. I do want to say before getting into it though, I really do appreciate all of your sweet messages in the comments on that community post and on Instagram. It really has been such a comfort and such a help. Know that so many people care about me and cared about Nugget, and I really appreciate y'all. Let's talk about books though, okay? I want to talk about books. I'm gonna do it hopefully in a way that is not totally sedate. And then at the end of the video, I'm gonna kind of tell you my plans for the month of October. It really hit me, I think, that this month marks, I guess, the end of third quarter of the year, and we're in the end of the year now, which is wild because I have so much to read and so much left to do this year. But I have a renewed vigor and I have a renewed purpose, I think, and I feel really excited, I guess, about the reading that I'm going to be doing in the coming months. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit in the end of the video. But this month, I think I read / DNF'd about 20 books, which I feel is pretty good, given some of the events that happened at the end of the month. I'm surprised that I was able to read as much as I did. 3 DNFs, but the rest were, full reads. So I guess, what is that, 17 books? A pretty solid effort. I'm not mad at it at all. And I got to read some of the books on my backlist that have been there the longest. That was something that I am grateful for and or glad about. I have been putting all of the books that I finished reading on my TBR cart. It's not really a TBR cart, but on the bottom shelf of my TBR cart, and seeing that kind of pile up over the weeks and see myself actually getting through the things I own has been really exciting. So anyway, the first thing I'm going to do is talk to you about the 3 DNFs that I had, and then I'm going to talk to you about some of the other books that I read this month. I'm not going to talk about all of the books that I read this month. I did a taste test. I did a couple of other really in-depth vlogs. So if you want to see my thoughts on the rest of the books that I read this month, they're in other videos, but this is going to be a video in which I talk about the books that I haven't really talked to you about before, and or that I have only briefly talked about in weekly reading vlogs or whatever. So first up, DNFs. I tried to read Rise to the Sun. I think the author is Leah Johnson. This book was kindly sent to me by, I think, a PR company. It wasn't by the author or by the publisher. And I tried to give this one a go because it sounded interesting. I think it's about 2 girls at different stages of their life. I think one might be a college student, one might be a high school student, not entirely sure there, but they end up going to this music festival, and I think they sort of discover things about themselves, and then they enter some sort of romantic relationship or something like that. I only got 20% into this one. I was listening to the audiobook and it was perfectly fine, but I just knew that this book wasn't going to connect with me. It was really heavy on high school experiences, high school struggles, and I think that it's important that this book exists. I'm sure it is a really good book for the age demographic. It's just not something that was really connecting with me. I don't know. I've been having such a complicated relationship with YA. I did read some YA this month that I really liked, and then some YA I'm just I'm just not vibing with it the way I used to, and I think that's a running theme of this year, and I'm fine with it. A book that I actually thought that I was going to finish, but I'm pretty confident in my DNFing, is Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. So this is a dark romance, and it is, I would say, kind of Outlander-y. It's not set in Scotland or anything like that, but it definitely has that same feel, that grittiness, that darkness, the really rough, shall we say, assault scenes. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. So this book is about our heroine, and at the start of the story we find out that she is the daughter of this disgraced lady. She was supposed to, marry someone of her social status, but she ended up sleeping with Pirate, having his child, and then kind of being disgraced. And so now she is in the States, just trying to kind of get by. She is kind of living above her means at the moment, and just trying to basically sell her daughter off to the highest bidder. And she does this at the start of the story, which is not a good experience for anyone, especially you as the reader. And then we have some pretty gruesome death scenes for a couple of the, shall we say, parental figures in this heroine's life. And then we flash forward, I think 10 years or so, and we find out that she is a lady pirate, and she's kind of doing her own thing. I don't know. The beginning of the story, I think, is really what made it not for me. I understand that the author was, I guess, maybe trying to stay accurate to the time period or whatever, but it just was a little bit too harrowing for me. I don't really like reading on-page graphic depictions of assault. I don't think that that's an uncommon feeling or thought, and I wish that I had some sort of moral parameters that I could put my dark romance reading into, oh, this is my hard limit, but that's not really the case. It just really is situational for me. But this one, the situations that our character got herself into, not by any fault of her own, don't. It just wasn't something I personally wanted to continue on with. Yeah, I don't know. The hero also just didn't seem that interesting to me. I think there's maybe 2 heroes. Regardless, just like wasn't it for me. Next up we have a soft DNF, The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. I picked this one up because I was interested to see how this author's work would be different after having picked up The Spanish Love Deception in its indie form, right? There wasn't much of a difference, I will say, in the writing. I think that, unfortunately, Elena Armas' characters are a little bit too immature for my liking. The dialogue is kind of childish. The situations that these characters get themselves into, again, is a little bit childish, like stumbling over themselves because, oh my god, this guy just came out of the shower in nothing but a towel kind of moments. And I don't know, it was a little corny for me. Like, I just couldn't fully buy into it. And I'm sure I'll finish this book at some point because I'm assuming it's probably going to show up on like Goodreads Choice Awards, and I like to be prepared. But honestly, maybe I'll just like save it for that video, so I'll at least have one book to vlog for it. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. All right, let's get into the books that I did finish, okay? Finished Truly Devious, like the entire first trilogy, I guess. I know that Maureen Johnson is like writing more books in the series, but I have the original like OG trilogy. And I read it in a weekly reading vlog, which I feel like was a good way to kind of get through the series. And it was not good. It wasn't bad. Okay, it wasn't bad, but it definitely wasn't what I wanted. And that sucks because it started off so promising. This book is about Stevie Bell, or these books, I guess, are about Stevie Bell, and she is a student at Allingham Academy. She is really excited because this academy really fosters a sense of like individual learning. You get to really kind of hone your craft in whatever you're excited about. And she is really into solving murders and cold cases, especially the one at Allingham Academy. So the like headmaster, dean, whatever, the creator, the founder of this academy, his wife and his daughter disappeared many years ago, and no one knows what happened to them. He never solved it himself, and then he died kind of under mysterious circumstances as well. So there's a lot of mystery shrouding this academy, and Stevie ends up solving the mystery as, you know, the series goes on, along with a modern day mystery that's happening as students end up dead at Allingham Academy. And it sounded so promising in the first book. I was so gripped. It all kind of went downhill. I just feel like some of the reveals I would have preferred to happen in a present day sense rather than us getting like flashbacks to the past and seeing things happen how they actually happened. I think it would have been more mysterious, more interesting had Stevie been solving this mystery. Didn't really get the like past timeline, if that makes sense. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion. I just personally didn't love it. I also felt like the conclusion was a little hasty, and on top of that, I felt like the romance in this series was completely unnecessary, and it took me out of the story multiple different times. Like, I wanted to root for a relationship between Stevie and like another character, but the character she ends up with, I'm just like, you suck. You're not that guy. You're just not it. So I ended up giving like the series 3 stars as a whole. It wasn't terrible or anything. If you'd like more of my thoughts and feelings on that series, I have, again, a whole weekly reading vlog on it. As a whole, the series was kind of disappointing, but I'm also like not upset that I read it. If anything, this is definitely like piquing my interest in more mysteries. I feel like that's something I've discovered about myself over time, is that I really love mysteries and I'm not as into thrillers. So I really want to like start reading cozy mysteries again, and or just like finding mystery series that excite me. This obviously was a YA series, so I feel like it couldn't have gone as far as it maybe could have if it was an adult series. So anyway, next up we have a book that brought me an insane, honestly, amount of joy this month. Probably my favorite romance that I read this month, and it might be, I think it's one of my favorite romances of the year, fuck it. Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I did not expect to enjoy this book, and I really did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I gave this book 5 stars, and it was a treat from start to finish. Now, I personally really did love The Love Hypothesis. I thought it was a really fun story. I think I gave that one 4 stars instead of 5, because there were definitely issues with it that I could see, and that have definitely popped up again and again and again in Ali Hazelwood's writing. And I think I don't have to go into too much depth about what those things are, but if you need a refresher or you just don't know anything about this author's work, she really likes the tall, hulky man and like tiny, fainting woman thing, like a lot. Like every book she writes, the woman has to be frail with no boobs and also, you know, falls over herself for the man. That did not clear itself up in this book. That's definitely still an issue, and I definitely see all of the issues in this book. However, I feel like this one really did something for me that The Love Hypothesis didn't, and that is to create a puzzle piece experience, and for that I am thankful for Ali Hazelwood. So this book is about Bee and Levi. Bee is a really passionate neuroscientist, I believe, and she is invited to a project with NASA. They are going to start making, I guess, helmets for astronauts that also kind of like analyze brain patterns and shit. I'm not really entirely sure of the science of it. I don't really care. In doing so, she has to work with an engineer, Levi, and Levi was someone that she also dealt with in her PhD program, and he always kind of gave her the cold shoulder, was kind of like ugly to her and just like not very nice. She has to work with her work nemesis now on this project. She moves to Houston and starts working on this project with him. Sparks fly, you know? It's interesting to me that I liked this because I'm not an enemies to lovers girly, though this wasn't really like true enemies to lovers. It was more like a rivals to lovers that like quickly develops into lovers, I think. I think what worked so well about this book for me was, again, the puzzle piece aspect of it. Getting to see how similar Levi and Bee were and how well they complemented each other as the story went on was delightful. And it had my favorite like secret identity, hidden identity trope done well, because I can really hate that trope or I can really love that trope. And the reason I loved it so much is because the characters were getting to know each other in real life and getting to know each other online. And I don't feel like there was a ton of deception. That's the thing. Like, you can have secret identity, hidden identity without a ton of deception surrounding it. And that's how I felt about this one. They had kind of like alter egos, I guess you could say, on academic Twitter, and they were like best friends basically and like DM'd each other all the time on academic Twitter, and then they were getting to know each other in real life, and then they figured out who the other was. Oh, I love that shit. I eat that shit up. That also kind of happens in Punk 57 and some other books that I really enjoy, and the fact that was done in this book, icing on the fucking cake. It just was. It was. Was it very similar to The Love Hypothesis? Absolutely. I do think this one kind of toned down some of the fanfiction tropes, so I think if that was something that bothered you in that book, maybe give this one a try. But I think if you just don't really like Ali Hazelwood's vibes, you're not really into the way that she writes heroes and heroines and their interactions and their sex scenes, this might not be for you. I mean, it might not be for you, and that's fine. But it certainly was for me, and I couldn't recommend it highly enough. It was a good time. I'm really hoping to be able to kind of like recreate that joy and that love in another romance coming up this next month. I don't know what that romance will be, but like I desperately need a smile. You know what I mean? I need a fucking smile. I read Stolen Air for that same video. I was reading some like hyped romances, and I just wanted to talk about them again because I had a really good time with these romances. But this book was about Nessa and Miko, and Miko at the beginning of the story is trying to kind of like seek revenge because his father died, was kind of brutally murdered, and he is a mafia dude, so his solution as revenge is to kidnap the daughter of the guy that killed his dad. Convoluted, but sort of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I just really liked this. This is a Sophie Lark book, and I haven't had the best luck with her books in the past. Some books I've really liked, some books have just kind of like fallen flat for me. None of her books have been like, you know, horrible or like things that I really hate, but I sometimes have a hard time connecting with her heroes and heroines. But I just thought this book was really charming, ended up giving it 4 stars. Liked the way that our hero really supported our heroine's passions and like what she was into. She was a ballet dancer, she really liked choreography, and he really like helped her do that, even though she was technically like taken hostage and taken prisoner. He let her like develop this ballet, and she got to like put it on at the end of the book. I don't know, it's just really cute. I feel like I should have more to say about this one, but it was just nice, and I feel like the steam worked for me. I think my issue with Sophie Lark books typically is that I don't feel like there's a lot of heart. There's a lot of steam, but not a lot of heart. And in this one, the heart was definitely up a little bit. Like there was definitely more heart than in some of her other stories, but also like the steam, I definitely like bought into it a little bit more. It didn't feel like sex scenes for the sake of sex scenes to me. It felt sexy. I don't know. I liked it. It was a good book. Next book I read this month is one that I'm not actually going to talk to you about, but I just want to kind of tease it so you know what's coming in October. I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and wow, was it not at all what I was expecting. I didn't hate it also, which I'm sort of shocked at. So if you want my full and final thoughts on that book, you know what, I'm going to tell you what video actually it's going to be in, because I'm just feeling zesty. I want to share some things with you, and this video is probably not going to be very long, but I am doing a video where I read the 5 longest books on my TBR, so it's going to be a long video, as you can tell. Secret History is one of the longest books that I own, so that was the first book that I read. It was a ride, it was an experience, and I'm very excited to share my thoughts and feelings with you. Again, all I'll really tell you is that I didn't hate it. Moving on, I read Lucy Checks In by D. Ernst for a list video that's coming to you, I think, next Sunday, so again, something I guess to look forward to if you're into that. It was one of the final books that I needed to read, and I had read a D. Ernst book before for my last list video. I didn't expect a lot going into this, and yet somehow it still disappointed me. This book's about Lucy. Oh my god, I know, it's shocking, right? And she is, I want to say like in her 40s or something, and she used to manage a hotel in New York, and that came with a lot of perks. She got to live in a really like bougie penthouse apartment. She got to like, have someone clean her apartment for her. I don't know, she lived a very lavish lifestyle for a hotel manager. The hotel kind of goes under, and she's not responsible for it, and yet she kind of is unfortunately like tied to the scandal of it, so she's unable to get a job in New York. She's able to find a job in France, where she is going to fix up a hotel and manage it, you know, in the French countryside, make it into this luxe experience. But when she gets there, she realizes she definitely bit off more than she could chew, because this place is like not even remotely ready for guests. It has been in the owner's family for a really long time, but it is sort of like defunct and gross, and they have to do a lot of work before things get nice. And while she does have lodging, it's not like the bougie penthouse that she was kind of expecting it to be. She's basically just delusional at the start of the story is really like the gist of it, and that delusion does not stop as the story goes on. I think my big issue with this was that there was very very fucking little romance, even though it is marketed as a romance. This book is about a woman renovating a hotel. If you are interested in that, this is the book for you, because that is all this book is, and the hero sucks ass. The hero frequently doubts the heroine and like talks down on her and is like, there's no way you know what the fuck you're doing. The misogyny of that didn't really work for me. I don't know. I get there's like an enemies to lovers component to a lot of stories. I definitely get that, but I think there's a fine line to walk between a guy that is kind of a dick and then a guy that like doesn't respect women at all. Like I'm not gonna root for the guy that doesn't respect women at all, and unfortunately that was the case here. Fucking on, because I don't want to talk about that book anymore. The next two books are books that I read for my Patreon exclusive reading vlog for the month, and those books are KU books, so let's talk about them. First up, we have Mercy by Sarah Kate. This is the last book in the Salacious Players Club series. I have read all of them at this point, and so I feel like I have pretty firm thoughts and feelings on all of them, and I can say, unfortunately with some degree of certainty, that Mercy was my least favorite of the four books. I really didn't enjoy the first one either, Praise, and I think it kind of makes sense that I also didn't like this last one, given there are a lot of parallels, shall we say, between them, and also like there's a lot of overlapping characters and themes, which I didn't actually enjoy. So this book is about Maggie and Beau. Beau is the son of Emerson, the hero in the first book. He is the son that kind of like fucks up, shall we say, and loses his girlfriend to his father. So Beau is kind of dealing with the feeling of inadequacy that brings and his like failures and shortcomings. This book definitely deals with mental health. I mean, I think all of them kind of do to an extent, but this one definitely does. So if that's something that you don't want to read about, maybe don't, because we have a lot of feelings of inadequacy here. And then we have Maggie, who is, I don't know, like in her 30s, but thinks that she is an old hag that doesn't deserve love or something like that. But she does discover that she actually does have a kink, even though she previously thought she didn't. And that kink is to be a dom. And at the same time, as Beau is dealing with his feelings of inadequacy and loss, he's also discovering that he is a submissive. And so Maggie and Beau, after a series of events, enter into a very interesting dom-sub relationship. What to even say? Where to begin with this book? There's like so many things I didn't like, both on a like deeply personal level and also just on a like objective book level. I feel like this book didn't really do very much to kind of like normalize, I would say, this kink and to make it seem like something that is like normal and cool. To me, this book made this kink seem like something that people do if they are unhappy with their lives. Maggie was deeply insecure and deeply unhappy with her life, and Beau was also deeply insecure and deeply unhappy in his life, and it was like those things manifested into their kinks, which from my understanding typically is not how kinks work. Far be it for me to like really psychologize, because I don't really have kinks like this that I feel like I need to explore, I guess you could say. So I don't want to like say that this is not how kinks develop at all, but I think typically the idea or the thought is that kinks are a, you know, safe and healthy way to kind of like explore your sexuality, and they are not based on your shortcomings, right, and things that you are trying to kind of compensate for. It felt weird to have that kind of be play here, and on top of that, I did not like how other people were kind of like brought into the kinks, shall we say. So there's a scene where Maggie ends up looking at collars at the Salacious Players Club. Beau's dad comes up and is like, oh, who's that for? Is that for your sub? And she's like, yeah, like I'm looking for a color or whatever, and he's like, I think you should pick this one. And it's like, why are you picking the color for your son? Like, I know he doesn't know at the time, but it's fucking weird. And it just, there were multiple moments like that I was like, this is not like sexy taboo, this is just weird, and I'm not appreciating this. Low-key lost my train of thought because I just had a sneezing fit, but I didn't enjoy this book. I feel like the sex scenes were not it for me. I didn't really enjoy the kinks present here, and also I don't feel like the kinks were done justice, so I'm gonna leave it at that. I ended up giving this book 3 stars, but I really feel like I'm gonna bring it down to a 2-star. It wasn't that this book was like so poorly written or like the worst thing I've ever read, but it just really deeply was not for me, and I feel like my rating should reflect that. So I'm gonna go ahead and change that on Goodreads, but I think if I were to recommend books from this series, I would definitely say books 2 and 3 are fun. I don't really like books 1 and 4, but it's all gonna depend on you and your preference. I also think this series largely depends on how much you like smut and how much you can tolerate smut. I know some people just like really don't like it at all. This book series is very smut heavy, and if you don't like the kinks in the books and or you don't like smut, these probably aren't for you, but anyway, moving on. Okay, now let's move on to a Kindle Unlimited book that I actually really did enjoy. It is Fling by Adriana Locke. This book came up on my radar because I like Adriana Locke's books, and she's definitely an author that like I watch for. I haven't read that many of her books, but the ones I have read, I have really enjoyed, and the premise of this one really interested me when I, you know, quickly skimmed over it on Amazon. But this book is about Maddox and Ashley. Ashley, at the start of the story, is just recently broken up with her fiance. I think he cheats on her or something like that, but she still has this all-inclusive vacation that she wants to go on, and that's non-refundable. It's for 2 people, so she needs to find someone else to go with her, and as her friends have unfortunately like turned her down, they are going to find find someone for her to go on this vacation with. And she ends up going with Maddox. Maddox is a guy that she's known for a really long time. They've always kind of been friendly acquaintances, shall we say, but never like true besties. Like definitely casual enough and like friendly enough to text each other from time to time, but not like, you know, childhood friends to lovers or whatever. And they get to kind of like explore their feelings for each other on this like really steamy, hot vacation, and also afterwards as they try to figure out like, is this something that we really want in the long term? I just felt like this was a really delightful book. It's not something that you have to like think a lot about. I feel like the pacing was really, really awesome. The sex doesn't happen until like the 50% mark in the book, even though I thought, you know, this book's called Fling. It's definitely about, you know, this like steamy vacation. Like I definitely think this is going to be, you know, sex forward, and there were sex scenes for sure, but I feel like the pacing of this book was really awesome. I really felt this like sexual tension between Maddox and Ashley, and I liked this kind of different take on a friends to lovers stories. It wasn't a childhood friends to lovers. It wasn't like best friends to lovers, but I liked that there was that like built-in chemistry. You could tell that these two knew each other and sort of like always thought the other was hot. It definitely just seemed like something that could happen in real life, and I really liked it. The only thing that I didn't like about this book, and the reason I docked it a star, I guess it's like two things hand in hand. Number one, I felt like the conflict in this book was a little bit out of left field and it didn't fit the tone of the story. It's definitely a little bit dark. I don't really want to spoil it for you, but there is a scene of like domestic violence and it just felt really out of place here. It's not between the hero and heroine, but it was definitely like, where did this come from? It felt very out of the blue. I also didn't really like Maddox's brothers. There's kind of this like running plot or like running joke, I guess you could say, about how one of Maddox's brothers is trying to prank the other by like putting stickers of his face all over his other brother's belongings. I don't know, it was really silly. I didn't really enjoy it, and I really don't like the whole like boys will be boys thing, so that just wasn't for me. But I did really like the romance between Maddox and Ashley, and it was just overall like a really easy breezy time. But I definitely will be picking up more Adriana Locke in the future because again, like I have a fun time with her books. Next up, we have the last two romances that I read in the month of September, both of which were pretty good. One actually took me by surprise though. We have The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I ended up giving this book, I think, 5 stars because it was just a fun time. I put this on my most anticipated list of 2022. I didn't really expect to enjoy this one as much as I did. I feel like it was one of the books that I put on that list that I was like kind of unsure about. What I'm finding out is that a lot of the books that I added to that list, the ones I really expected to love, I hated, and the ones that I like didn't really go in with very high expectations but was still excited for, those are the ones that like really came through for me, I guess. This book is about Hannah and Jack. Hannah is a bodyguard, essentially. She is I think they call it like personal protection agent or something like that. I don't really know. But she is tasked with basically being a bodyguard to pretty much anyone she's assigned to. And at the start of the story, she ends up getting unceremoniously dumped by one of her fellow bodyguards, and she's kind of dealing with the pain from that, in addition to the fact that her mom, who she had a complicated relationship with, died. So she's kind of going through the motions, and when she's assigned to Jack, who is a really famous movie star who's going through a hard time, she's not really excited about it and she's not really looking forward to it. But over the course of the story, Jack and Hannah really fall for each other. The thing that really works for me about this book is that it wasn't deeply emotional. This was not a romance that really like tries to hug on your heartstrings. Okay, that's not true. It does actually. Sometimes I'm thinking back and it does. This book was just funny. I liked the dialogue between the two characters. It felt like kind of an outlandish plot line. This book was written during the pandemic, and Catherine Center said that like her goal with it was to create a story that was going to be fun and lighthearted and like, you know, just something different. And I felt like that was the case with this book. This is not something that's like super swoon worthy. It's not a romance that I would recommend if you were looking to just like find a new book boyfriend or anything, though I do really like Jack as a character. It's just one of those books that's fun, and sometimes you just need a book that's fun, that you don't want to think too much about, that you don't want to think too hard about. A book that's like light on the angst and the tension, kind of light on the sex scenes too. Like if you want something like really steamy that talks about, you know, P&V intercourse, like that, you're not going to get that with Catherine Center books. You're definitely not going to get that with The Bodyguard, but it was just fun and I don't really care. I gave it 5 stars. It's a good time. Pick it up. And then lastly, a book that is also one of my most anticipated, or was one of my most anticipated, and did kind of unfortunately let me down, is Ruby Fever by Ilona Andrews. This is the final book in the Catalina Baylor trilogy. I'm so praying that we get an Arabella trilogy. Anyway, this one I feel like started off pretty strong and did remind me of the other books in this trilogy. Of Catalina, our heroine, and Alessandro, our hero, gearing up to fight this like final big bad. This is someone who has tried to kill other members of Alessandro's family, and so we have Catalina and Alessandro like teaming up together along with all of their friends and family basically to fight this big bad. And I was so excited to see that final showdown. Final showdown happened in the last like 3% of the book. I swear to God, I was like so excited for this like final battle because Ilona Andrews, like, they write battles well, and yet somehow we get shafted. It was so disappointing, and I just feel like it is kind of fitting, I guess, given how much I didn't really care about the romance in this story, but it just felt like nothing really came fully into fruition. It was like a really fun ride, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh, okay. Like, I have nothing to take away from this. Like, no special experience, no special memories. Like, I don't care about your relationship romantically. I don't really care that you defeated this big bad because it took like 5 seconds to do so. It was disappointing in pretty much all ways. I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't a bad book. Even when Alona Andrews writes a book that I don't totally love, like, it's never a bad book, but I just feel like there was a lot of like wasted opportunity and wasted potential here. And that's really like tough to say when you really like an author's writing typically. Anyway, I have 3 minutes left on this SD card, so I'm gonna wrap it up. Those were the books that I read this month. I told you I'd kind of tell you what is on the agenda for the rest of the month. Can't share my big reading plans for the rest of the year because I have a lot of like exciting secret TBR content coming. I'd say October, November, and December are the months that I have had planned advanced the longest, and they are the videos that have the most work going into them for the entire year. So I'm really excited to share them with you. I've got a lot of secret TBR content. I have a lot of like I Read Fives. I have a Choose Your Own Adventure coming. I have Chanmis coming, which I'm really, really thrilled about. And again, I have that list video coming next Sunday. So, you know, exciting things coming. I did want to briefly let you know though that there is going to be more sponsored content in the month of October than there have been in other months past, mostly because I am working to pay off the medical debt of my cat. I'm going to be taking more sponsored opportunities in October to pay those off, and I hope you can understand. I really, really appreciate your support here on this channel and in watching my videos. Again, I don't think I could have gotten through this past week without you, and again, I'll talk more about that in future videos, but for now, I just want to say thank you so much. I love y'all so, so much, and until next time.